Power Hour with John Lee.
Okay, welcome to the Power Hour. Power Hour people say yes, we're back now into 2021, flying through January. Beautiful weather here in Spain. It is cold, but the skies are blue. So what we're talking about today, something not as nice as a blue sky, actually. We're talking about mass shootings. What constitutes a mass shooting? Well, somebody going into a public place or targeting a public place and killing people with a gun. And generally, but not always, we're talking about one person who's done it. And whenever you say school shooting, something like that, or public shooting, or shooting in a cinema, people automatically think America. You know, you just do. I live in Europe, and I'm telling you that they do. And there are very good reasons for that, but I just think it's extremely unfair because I've no evidence to show that American people are more violent per capita than anyone else in the world. And whenever I see a school shooting or whatever, I see one psycho and maybe 100 victims, you know, and those victims are American as well, you know, so they're not running around with guns. They're trying not to get killed. And there's just one of them who's a psycho. And the problem is not that he's a psycho. There are psychos everywhere. In my view, the problem is that psycho was able to get guns and bullets and then use them against other people. And the laws and legislations are simply not in place to protect the citizens. When you've got a country of that size that doesn't protect its citizens, especially its children, I think you've got a major problem, which we'll come back later. So, come back to later. I want to look at cases in which they're not American, because it's not just an American thing. It's not just an American phenomena. There are psychos all over the world. And if you give them guns, they will go around shooting people because they're psychos, regardless of where they are. So we'll begin in England, right? Hungerford. Where's that? Ask English people where Hungerford is. They don't know. It's in the middle of England. It's like Middle Earth. Do you know what I mean? A mysterious land of cricket and cups of tea. And no one ever really goes there unless you're actually from there. But it's a beautiful little place, Hungerford. It's a typical, quintessential English little village. You know, everyone's really nice. They'll give you a cup of tea. And down there was a massacre, hence the name Hungerford Massacre. And it was committed in 1987 by a guy called Michael Ryan. And he really does tick the boxes, you know. He's the kind of, well, he did. He's the kind of guy who you would bet on. You know, if you said, right, who in this town is going to go psycho and start killing people, you would say Michael Ryan. You know, he's a loner, no friends at school. I mean, none of these things guarantee that you're going to become some kind of psycho, but this is the stereotype, you know. He had no friends, he didn't really talk, didn't talk when he was a kid, he was spoilt by his parents, and then maybe a mechanism for dealing with that, he got into guns, joined a gun club, became fanatical about military type things in general. And he accumulated an arsenal. I mean, this guy had bulletproof vests and protective headgear. I mean, he was going out dressed as a soldier and he was wearing the proper kit of the time, ready for war. He was dressed for war. And then, I mean, don't ask me why, don't ask anyone why, because I think it is a mystery. He took a woman into the woods. Now, he used to go to these woods. They were called Save a Snake Forest. And this woman was there, and she was going to go for a picnic. This is tragic, man. All of it is. She's got 2 kids with her, and or possibly 3. But she's got her kids with her, and she pulls up in the car, and they're going to go for a picnic. But Michael Ryan's there. Michael Ryan appears with a gun. And what he's done is put the kids in the car and then take the woman out into the forest and shoot her multiple times. He executed her. For no reason, didn't know her. Didn't know the kids. Obviously, they hadn't done anything wrong. He just snapped. And unfortunately, the guy who snapped had a gun and a lot of ammunition. And he had many guns, as I say, he had an arsenal. So he does that. And he kills this woman, this mother, and leaves the kids in the car. And they probably don't know where the mother is. when they're sitting in the car waiting for mummy to come back. It's just so bad. And so he goes into a shop then after that. He's in his car and he goes into a shop and he tries to, I don't know if he tried to rob the place or what he did, but he shot through the glass and the woman dived on the floor. And he's trying to shoot her again, but he can't. And nobody really knows if the gun jammed or if he just didn't have any ammo, which I doubt. I think he was a gun expert, so I think he would have known if he didn't have any ammo, unless his mind was completely gone, which doesn't seem to be. Seems to have made decisions and calculations along the way. And in any case, he didn't kill the woman. The woman survived, but I mean, especially when she found out what was going to happen later, in hindsight, the fear would probably never leave you, you know. And anyway, he didn't kill her, or he couldn't kill her, and he left, and he drove away. Now, gone, I don't know where his mind went, but he drove home, went back to his house where he lived with his mother. He's deciding, I don't know, maybe he needs to escape or whatever he's doing. But he goes home, goes back to the house, to his mother's house, and he gets all his weapons, right? And he's got a bag full of weapons and bullets and all that. And he puts it in the boot, or the trunk as you call it in America. And he's ready to go. And he thinks that the best thing he can do before he leaves is to burn his own house down. Burn his mother's house down, actually. Because there might be evidence in there, I suppose. And he set it on fire. Really well. I mean, if I tried to burn a house down, it might take me a while to get the fire going. But no, this guy got it up, burning. I don't know if he'd read how to do that or what, but he really did burn the house. So he's come back in. He's come back out of the house, and he's got in his car and he's tried to leave the area and go on his mission with all his guns. But the car won't start. So he can't start the car, so he has to get out of the car. And he gets his Kalashnikov and he rat-a-tat-tats his own car outside his house. So the neighbours now, they're looking. The house is on fire. I don't think they know about the woman in the forest. The house is on fire, proper style. And he's just put maybe 8 bullets in his own car. And it was a car that he loved. All he had was the car, really, and his guns. And during this, his neighbours started making noise, as you would. What's going on, etc. And he starts shooting them. Started shooting up his neighbours. And into all this drives his mother. Right, his long-suffering mother, I imagine. And she arrives home to find the house on fire. He's shot up the car. There are neighbours in the street. I don't know in what state they were in, whether any of them were dead yet or whatever. But I mean, she was walking into the middle of a horror movie, starring her own son. And so she's approached her son, Michael, and she was heard to say the words, "Don't kill me." And he did. He double tapped her. He shot her in the head twice. I mean, at this point, when you're standing outside your mother's house and it's on fire, and you just shot your mother in the head, and you've been shooting at the neighbours, your mind is gone. It's gone. It's broken. It must be. I'm not an expert, but it must be. And so he carries on with this. He shoots. I mean, he killed a lot of people, but I think he shot 7 people on his own street. He even shot one woman through the window. He went down the street systematically shooting people. And then he's going off down these alleys and ginnels and country roads and all this kind of stuff. And it's rural, really. I mean, I suppose they just didn't have the manpower for that. I know that's probably not a good word nowadays, but the resources, the human resources, the infrastructure, and they just never thought that would happen. They weren't prepared for it at all. So they didn't know where he was, and anyone who went near him got shot, including a cop. He saw on like what you could call a main road in a village. Just shot the cop because he was a cop. Carries on, sees a woman talking to a taxi driver. He's in the taxi, she's standing in the road, she's walking or whatever. And he just shoots them up, especially the taxi driver. And they came in and threw blankets over the taxi so you couldn't see him, the taxi driver inside, because it was so horrific what he did to him. And he's got he's got a Kalashnikov and he's got some handguns and he's got a load of ammunition. This is the main thing that was noticed, that he had so much ammunition that he was actually just throwing it because it was too heavy or it was getting in his way or whatever. And he's throwing cartridges of ammunition around, leaving them on the floor because he had plenty. And this is not a good situation at all. So he goes to a school, right? I don't know what's going on in his mind. I think he went to that school, and he's gone to the school, and he's got into the school, gained access, and he's in there and he's hiding, but he's been seen. And the police turn up and they're trying to talk to him. And he's asking, how's my mother? I don't know what that means. He'd already shot her in the head, but he did ask, how's my mother, And eventually he shot himself, killed himself in the school with the cops outside, trying to help him. But he killed 16 people and injured 15. Just walking around in a little village and shooting people, but he was doing it for a long time. I don't know what the time lapse is. It was a few hours. Between 2 and 4 hours, I suppose, but it was quite a long time that he was walking around the place shooting people. But what happened after that? The government, under massive pressure from the people, banned semi-automatics and pump-action weapons, guns. I know nothing about guns. I know what a semi-automatic is and I know what a pump-action is, more or less. But they were banned in Britain after that, which I think is a good thing, and it had a really big effect. And in fact, handguns were banned as well because there was an incident in Scotland in Dunblane, which is horrific, which involved Andy Murray, the tennis player. He was there. Some psycho went in and shot 14 kids, little kids. Disgusting. And did it with a handgun. So these semi-automatics, pump actions and handguns were all banned in England. And do you know how many school shootings there have been since then? Or incidents of this type? Zero. So then, that happened in England in 1987. 44 years ago, is it? No, 34 years ago. And then we're going to fly down to Australia with the Port Arthur massacre, which was committed by a guy called Martin Bryant. Right, and he did it in 1996. So what do we know about Martin? Well, he was born into a quite normal family, really. There doesn't seem to have been any major problems, but he was receiving a psychological help and evaluation therapy when he was 3 years old. And I call it that because I don't really know what to call it when they're 3 years old. I don't know if the psyche's fully formed or not. But the experts do, and they were working with him when he was 3. So there must have been some behavioural issues there to get psychiatry or psychiatric treatment for a 3-year-old. But that stopped, and it appears that was a mistake. His father committed suicide when he was young as well, which had a massive effect on him and became very important to other people as well later in life, as I will describe. So what happens? He grows up and he starts living with this woman. Right? This weird, artistic type of woman, but she was weird. And they had, I don't know what the nature of their relationship was, but they lived together, and she was a lot older than him. And then she died, and she left him millions of Australian dollars, but it's a lot of money. And he then he's inherited all this money, so he's rich now, Martin Bryant. And the woman's dead, and his father's dead, and there's no one apparently to control him. And he's got a big bag of guns and ammunition, right? And this is actually in Tasmania, which, as we know, is an island off the coast of Australia, but it's still Australia. And he gets his bag of guns, and he goes to this bed and breakfast, a B&B, and he walks in and he confronts the owners, as a husband and wife team that own the B&B, and he executes them. And why? Well, because apparently the reason that his father committed suicide was because he tried to buy that B&B and they got there first, or maybe they felt like, maybe Martin Bryant's family felt hard done by in some way. But Martin Bryant went round there many years after they bought this B&B, disgruntled and executed both of them. And I suppose he locked the house up, and he went down to the tourist resorts. I suppose it's a resort, a tourist destination or attraction at Port Arthur. And he goes down there. It's a historical site, really, Port Arthur, from the British Empire. And he goes down there, and he goes to this, it's like a bar, it's a club, it's a, cafeteria, it's, where people go when they arrive. And he goes there, and he gets himself a burger and some chips, and he eats it, sits there calmly. People who knew him saw him sitting outside the bar, I suppose, eating a burger, and he's got his chips and all that, and he's finished it, and he's put his stuff in the bin, as you do, and he's gone back in with his bag, pulled out an AR-15, I believe it was, and just started shooting people, everybody and anybody, no discrimination, no preference, everybody. Killed 20 people in there, just a massacre. And then he walks out of there through the adjoining door into the gift shop. And there were still people in the gift shop. I would have been over the river, me. I would have been up the mountain, down the other side. But maybe they couldn't hear him for some reason. I don't know. But they were still in the gift shop. And he went in the gift shop and shot them as well. And then he walks out into the car park, starts shooting people on the car park. But I think it takes the human mind a while to just accept that this is actually happening. This is real. It's not a drill. It's not a show. Especially in a place like that, in Tasmania, in the 90s, you certainly wouldn't be expecting that. And they weren't. And then he got on a bus. I mean, can you imagine being sitting on a bus? There's only one door, and it's at the front of the bus, and he's just come through. He's got on the front, and he's walking down, and he's shooting people, and you're on the bus. Even if you want to be a hero, it's really awkward. Do you know what I mean? You probably find yourself on the floor, and then hoping that you don't get killed. So he's done that, and obviously the place has gone completely berserk. And a young woman, there's a group of people, you see, and they're trying to hide, but this young woman decides that she's going to get her 2 daughters and get out of there. Instinct, I suppose, and she does that. So she leaves the area, and she's going down this country road on foot with her 2 daughters. So Martin Bryant gets in his car. I don't know if he was going after her or not, but he got in his car and left and went down the road where she was. And he got out of his car beside her, and he got his gun out, and he shot the woman in front of her kids, and then shot the 2 kids as well. I mean, this is really hard to even say. And I'm not even going to... I'll tell you. He chased one of the kids around a tree. I can't really describe that. That's too much for me. But I mean, horrendous crime. And then he's going down. He carries on in his car, and he sees another car. Decides he wants that car, so he stops that car and kills everyone in it. He did. He killed everyone in the car. 4 people. Stole that car. Went along. Saw another car, and there's a married couple in the car. And he kills the wife and puts the husband in the boot or the trunk of the car and takes him hostage, and takes him to this B&B where he's previously executed the owners. He goes in, they're already in there dead. He brings this guy in, executes him as well. The police know where he is, they've found him or whatever. They turn up and surround the place. He set fire to the car outside, that's on fire, because he tried to set that as a trap for the police. That didn't work. So now he's trapped in the house, and he's trying to negotiate, but he's just talking a load of shit. Just trying to tell them stupid lies about, I was surfing, I was somewhere else, I was doing something else with my trendy mates. And not doing what I've actually done and what I've done. And so that didn't work either. And then, you see, the underlying factor as well with Martin is that he was a proper idiot. Stupid. That's why he was talking shit to the police. Because he's a real bad idiot, real stupid guy, apart from being a terrible person. And he set fire to the house that he was in. Without any, reasonable means of escape. And I think that he probably assumed the police would run in, maybe kill him. I don't know what he thought was going to happen there. But he set fire to the house, and then he came running out of the house on fire, diving on the floor, rolling around with smoke billowing off him. Absolute tool. And they put him in an ambulance, and they took him to the hospital, and they took him into the burns unit, and they treated him. The staff were given the option, actually, whether they wanted to treat him or not, because he's killing kids. And he actually he was taken care of, and they looked after him. Do you know what I mean? You've got to hold your hand up to these people. And I might just say, fuck that. Let him sizzle in the corner. I don't give a fuck. Especially after what he did to those kids. But they didn't. They're better people than me, I suppose. And they helped him. And that piece of shit killed 35 people and injured 23 in one day. And that's in Tasmania. You can't go any further without coming back unless you want to go across the ice, And so that's all the way down there. That's got nothing to do with America. It's not America's fault that happened. It's just something needed to change, and it did. They brought in tough new gun laws in Australia at that point, and they did a massive buyback where they bought everyone's guns and I suppose at retail price. And it worked, and they've never had a mass shooting since. And that was in 1996, so that's 25 years ago. You know the point I'm making. And I'll make it again. Norway. Now, I said this to my mate Johnny Spence, boom, about the Norway attacks a few days ago. And I was asking him, if he thought that was a good idea to talk about on the Power Hour, because it's strong, And he said, Norway. Norway. Are you associating the word Norway with guns and violence? And it's just completely alien. He didn't know about it, you see. And I totally understand that. And it happened in 2011, Norway attacks. And it was a guy called Anders Breivik. He had a few names, but the name we know now is Anders Breivik. And he was a strange little cat as well. Also had psychological evaluations on him when he was a kid, very young. And he grows up with this, or he adopts at some point, this Nazi ideology, right? Which seems to be intoxicating to a certain kind of person. There's something about that, the iconography of it or whatever, that just attracts a certain kind of person. And what he does then, Breivik, is he writes a 1,500-page Aryan manifesto. And this is in 2011 he did the crime. So when would he have been doing that? I don't know, 2005 maybe? 2006, in the lead up to this, he was writing his manifesto. Anders, you've missed it, mate. It was a long time ago, and they lost. So the Aryan race, as nice as many blonde-haired people with blue eyes might be, the theory of the Aryan race was proven wrong. It's bullshit, mate. Leave it. But no, he decides to write 1,500 pages of bullshit. And while he was doing that, he was planning the attack, and he planned it for 11 months. So this is very different to a lot of cases where we see, before I was talking about Michael Ryan in Hungerford, it just seems like he snapped. That's the way it appears, that he just snapped. This guy planned it for 11 months, apparently. And that can be backed up, if not verified, by the way he began the attack, because he actually began with a car bomb, right? So he sets up this car bomb in the morning, and the car bomb blows up in the centre of Oslo and shakes the whole place. The people who were there, they're saying, is this a bomb or a terrorist attack or an earthquake? But even to them, this is Norway. Bad things don't happen, so I need an explanation. But it was a bad thing. It was a car bomb, and it killed 8 people. Killed 8 people in the morning with a car bomb. And he's on camera walking away from the scene at some point. It's not clear to me exactly when, before or after, but he's wearing a full cop uniform, and it is a cop uniform. And we know this because after he's done this, he leaves the scene in his cop uniform, and he goes to the coast because he wants to go to the island of Utoya. And when he gets there, people already know about the bomb when he arrives, and he says, "I'm a bomb specialist, bomb squad, whatever. I'm here to advise you on how to deal with the situation because of the bomb attack in Oslo." And they're looking at him, and they're officials, and he's wearing his uniform, and okay, fair enough. It was him. He did it. Don't put him on a boat, and that's what they did. They put him on a ferry and let him go to the island of Utoya. And why was he going there? Because the Labour Party, so you're talking about left wing, I don't know how far left they are or whatever, but they were having like this summer camp on the island, and parks on the island. And there were loads of people there. It's a very popular thing, just nice, young Norwegian people playing sports and having fun. And most of them blonde, curiously enough. And this guy, this maniac, Anders Breivik, he goes across the water on this like little ferry thing, pretending to be a cop, arrives on the island, looks like a cop, acts like a cop, walks like a cop, and he's got a gun, and it's an automatic weapon, or maybe it was semi-automatic. As I say, I'm not an expert by any means on firearms. I'm thinking that it might have been a semi-automatic. And he's walked up to a girl and just shot her and killed her. And then he's shot someone else, and he's shot someone else. And the whole island's just running wild. Everyone's running and hiding around this island because there's just a guy on this island murdering people. And if you look at the island from the sky, it looks like a heart. It's a pure utopia, and it's being destroyed. It's being poisoned by this maniac walking through this place of love and happiness with a fucking AR-15 or whatever he had, just shooting people up. And they were diving into the water. It's an island, they're diving into the water, people trying to get away from him. And he actually followed them. And he's on the shore, pumping bullets into the water. He let one guy go because he said he looked right wing, whatever that means. Just a nice looking blonde kid, like all the rest. But no, he let him live for some reason. And then he carried on killing people. And he killed, on the island, 69 people. He walked around that island and shot and killed 69 people. Broad daylight. In a cop's uniform. I don't know about his ammunition. I don't know about his firepower, but it was enough to kill 69 people unopposed. And then when finally the authorities, the relevant authorities, terrorist squad, turned up onto the island, he was easily arrested. I believe he wanted to be arrested. And he wasn't going to stop killing people until he saw, people that could arrest him. And when they arrived, he just put his gun down and they cuffed him. And and this is why I think he wanted to get arrested, because it was such, I don't know what the word is to describe somebody who does this, but he went to the court, obviously charged with all these murders, and the families and the whole population of the country, really, and people around the world were stunned by this, but especially the families of the victims and people who'd actually been victimised by him that day and not killed. They're in the court, and he's going in there, and he's doing this kind of Nazi power kind of stuff and giving it all the theatre of being some kind of martyr for the cause of the Aryan nation. Absolute fucking dick. And he killed 77 people and injured 319 in one day. And he got 21 years, but it seems, from what I've read, that he'll get 21 years and then he'll get another 21 years and another 21 years and he'll die in jail. But that caused a massive crackdown in Norway as well. And nothing like that has happened since. So generally the population reacts to these things, and then the government reacts to the population. And that is where I'm going with all this, because the first big school shooting, in America was in 1979. It was a Cleveland Elementary, which is actually in California. I think it's Santa Monica. Don't quote me on that. It's definitely California. just gone out of my mind. But it's called the Cleveland Elementary, and there's a girl called Brenda Spencer in 1979, and she comes from a weird home life. I know the word weird is subjective, but really is the best word for this case. It's a weird, broken home, and there's lots of allegations about her father, whether or not her father was a paedophile and he abused her. She says he did. She says that he did, and he says that he didn't, which is quite a classic dynamic, I suppose. And the mother, apparently, she says she knew about this but never did anything at all, never even said anything. She was a cold, cold woman, you know, and she didn't want anything to do with Brenda Spencer or her siblings. And the father was a weirdo, definite weirdo. And as evidence of the weirdness of her father, he bought a rifle, not a powerful rifle, but enough to kill you, and bullets. So he bought a powerful rifle, powerful enough to kill people, and bullets, and gave it to his 16-year-old daughter for Christmas. Right. So now his daughter's got this gun. Brenda Spencer, she's got this gun and she's got boxes of ammunition. Now she's supposed to be at school. It's Monday and she's supposed to be at school. But she's not. She's in a bedroom getting high, according to her. And she gets the gun, she opens the window, and there's a school right in front of her house, which of course she knew. And she starts firing bullets into the schoolyard, into the playground, at little kids and at the teachers, sniper style. She's got a scope on it, you know, the proper crosshairs and all that, looking down it and seeing kids magnified in front of you and pulling the trigger over and over again. She fired, I don't know, 36 shots, I think it was. She pulled that trigger 36 times. This is a 16-year-old girl shooting little kids. She shot one girl, miracle. It went through her arm there, like that, through her wrist, and came out the other side. Hit no bones, no arteries. I don't know how that happens. And the girl did just put a bandage on it. So that was a miracle of the day. That was wonderful. But I mean, it was just trauma. And she killed 2 people. One of the guardians who were there to look after the kids, and the headmaster of the school. And she injured 9, most of which were children, but she didn't kill any kids. That's a saving grace of just a horrible situation. And this case was famous because it's supposed to be the first school shooting, but it wasn't. It's all, you know, there's always they lie about this. But the reason it was such a monumental case was because when the police arrived and they couldn't believe that this little girl, this 16-year-old girl, was shooting up these kids. And they grabbed her and they said, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" You know. And she said, "I don't like Mondays." What? And that's where the song comes from. The Boomtown Rats. Tell me why I don't like Mondays. Tell me why I don't like Mondays. Because that's what she said. That was her reason for shooting up these kids, because I don't like Mondays. What? So this is the girl, this is your daughter. You haven't noticed anything wrong with this kid? Because I take one look and think, nah, you know, you're not babysitting for me or whatever. You know, she looks like a strange child. And you're going to give that girl a gun and ammunition for Christmas. Why? Well, he was asked about it. Why did you do that? And the mother says that he should be in prison because he gave her the gun, which might not be a bad point. And he says, well, you know, she used to like target shooting or whatever it's called. He used to go up in the mountains and shoot targets, and she liked it. All right, brilliant. We'll give her the gun then, if you want to do that. There are plenty of responsible gun owners in the world. Give her the gun. Let her get to know the gun, feel the gun, carry the gun, you know, get the weight of it and whatnot. Don't give her the bullets. If she's sitting in a house, why the fuck does she need bullets? And you gave her boxes of bullets, which she then fired into the school across the road. So she gets arrested. She goes to jail, prison. She's in a cell with another girl who's actually younger than she is. The other girl gets released, and one way or the other goes to live with Brenda Spencer's father, the guy who bought the gun in the first place. She goes to live with him and marries him. And is that a condition of moving in? You can move in, but you know what I want, and we'll have to get married because you're only 16. It's just sick. Just fucking sick. And she's living with him, and she gets pregnant, and she has a baby. And so this is now Brenda Spencer's stepmother, this young girl who's younger than Brenda Spencer, her cellmate, is now a stepmother, living with her father, having a baby. You know, so what the relationship is between all these people, I don't know, but it's very, very strange. And what happened after that? Well, she stayed in prison, and at one point, she some kind of love affair she was having failed, and I'm assuming it was with a woman because it's a female prison, I would imagine, but I'm not sure. But anyway, the relationship failed in some way, and she got like a pin, and she just ripped tattoo. They call them tattoos, they're not tattoos. Just ripped words into her chest, you know, freedom and hope or whatever. There's various versions of what she actually put, but she did do it because I've seen her testify to it in a bail hearing. And yeah, she killed 2 people and injured 9 when she was 16 years old. That's in 1979. And they say that's the first school shooting in America, which it's not. It was done in 1966 by Charles Whitman at the Texas University. He killed 16 people. So that's a lie anyway. So this, even if you say 1979, right, well, what's that then? What's that, 42 years we're on now? And what drastic measures have been taken to stop this happening again? We're in 2021. It's still happening now. This was 1979. You've had plenty of time to deal with it, and I'm afraid there are people who don't want to deal with it, because I know there are plenty of people who do. So that was in 1979, and what I'm looking at here in this section is women. So we've had 3 that weren't American. I'm trying to break molds here and make a point, and I'm having 3 that are women. Now, that's not easy to do, believe, because women don't generally go around shooting people, thank God, or whoever you want to thank. They refrain from that shit normally. But that wasn't the case in Pennsylvania, in Springfield Shopping Mall in 1985. What happened? Sylvia Segrist happened. And what do you know about Sylvia? Normal family. It's hard to get much information on her upbringing, but I'm not seeing anything traumatic there. But I do know that she joined the army. She was obsessed with military stuff. I've never met a girl who's obsessed with military stuff. I met a girl that was in the army, but I wouldn't say she was obsessed with military stuff. But anyway, she was, and she joined the army, but they discharged her. The army discharged her. She was only young. They discharged her for basically for insanity. They realised that she was insane, that she had serious mental health problems, and they released her. And she was actually diagnosed by the army and by private doctors after she was released as a paranoid schizophrenic. And she was known in this shopping centre, in the shopping mall, Springfield Shopping Mall. They knew her because she used to go in there marching up and down in a uniform and complaining that the colours were too bright in the shops and all that. And they knew she was like the local nutter. And one day, she turns up at the mall. She's 25 years old, and she turns up at the mall with a gun. And she's got the gun by her waist. Just, I don't know if you can see that, but, you know, just down here like that. Not doing that. And she'd been in the army, so she must have known that. I don't know what was going on with that, but she's kind of shooting randomly and missing people. Maybe she didn't want to kill anybody. Maybe she's just trying to make noise. I don't know. But she missed a few people. And I think in missing people, she accidentally shot a 2-year-old kid. I think it was an accident. I think she was completely insane. And she did something terrible. And she shot this 2-year-old boy and he died. And then she went in and she's walking around shooting people. And she shot 2 old men. senior citizens. And it turned out that the reason she was doing this, and she killed 3 people and injured 7 in the shopping mall. Which, I mean, can you imagine that the scenes when people realised what was happening? And the reason that she was doing this was because she wanted prison. Because the hospital was so traumatic for her, apparently. She hated the hospital so much. She convinced herself that prison was actually a better place for her. But I think she knew she couldn't be on the streets. She knew she was dangerous. She knew she couldn't fit in with society, and she needed to be taken off the streets, and somebody needed to come in and do this. And she thought, well, I'll go down to the shopping centre and I'll just shoot some bullets off and get arrested. And what happened was she was doing that. She was shooting the gun. And this guy comes out of a shop and he thinks it's a joke. Doesn't know it's a real gun. And he just grabs the gun off her and says, oh, you've picked the wrong person to mess with, and ripped the gun out of her hands. And that's where it ended. She just kind of had a reality check. And I think she's probably happy, like, thanks for stopping me. Why did nobody stop me before? Some part of her brain. And so this guy becomes the accidental hero. She's never getting out of jail. She's gone to prison and she's never getting out. I know that jail and prison are different. She's in prison and she's never getting out. No way. And I don't think she wants to. And I say that because she sent letters to President Clinton, Bill Clinton, and various other congressmen, loads of people, saying it is not right that I was allowed to buy a gun and ammunition. I was a registered paranoid schizophrenic. I was released from the army on mental health grounds. How is it possible that I can walk into a shop and buy a gun and ammunition? Look at me, I'm a fucking lunatic. And look what I've done. And now I have to live with that for the rest of my life. Do something about it. Change the law, change the legislation so this doesn't happen again. Did they change it? Did they do anything? No. If they did something, it wasn't effective, and we can see that today. So another woman I'm gonna hit you with at the Goleta post office. Yep, it's in California as well, and it's Jennifer San Marco in 2006. Now, what do we know about Jennifer? Well, she grew up in Brooklyn. Apparently, she was very quiet, but very smart in every way. Smart in her appearance and smart in her mind. With a good sense of humour, very attractive according to the boys, and very popular in that way. But she didn't really have any friends or any social skills. That's what I know about her. And then she moved, as you say, out east in America to the East Coast, and went to California as an adult, really. Teenager, adult. And she had various jobs. She worked for the police at one time. Well, she was a dispatcher, dispatching police cars. The 911 calls and all that. And anyway, she ends up getting a job in a post office, in the national post office. And that's a good job. It looks boring to me, a lot of this kind of stuff going on. But still, it's solid work that. You're well paid, good benefits, which you need in America for your health care and your dental care. And all. Just in case you're American, we get all that free in Europe. But that's a really good job there. So she's in there, she's working there for 6 years, and she starts off, and she's all right. She's friendly, she's attractive, and yeah, great, brilliant. Really hard worker, really fast and intelligent, no problem. But then she starts talking to herself, and she's having full-blown conversations with herself in the post office, right, while she's working. A big postal centre. It's not like a little post office. Big, massive sorting centre. And she's working in there, and she's talking to herself. And they mentioned in what I've seen that the machines were really loud. Maybe that's why she wanted to work there, because she was talking to herself, and the machines were so loud that people wouldn't hear her talking to herself. I don't know. But I wouldn't be surprised if that was part of it. And she worked there for 6 years, and she's going slowly mad. Right? And she's actually diagnosed at one point as being having severe mental illness, and they retired her. She had to take forced retirement because she was mentally ill. She was not correct in the head. And I suppose she took it as a firing, but technically it was early retirement, but not something you choose, something they do to you. And she moves away to New Mexico, and lives in a little A-frame house. It's proper prairie stuff. It's like desert and 25 houses and a shop. And she was living there. Now, previously, I forgot to mention, previous to this, when she was living in California, she had a next door neighbour, a woman, and she had troubles with her. Well, that was a problematic relationship with the next door neighbour. You need that information. So she's living out in the arse end of nowhere, and she's got an imaginary friend. And everyone in the town knows her, and they know she's got an imaginary friend. She's going into public buildings and shops, wherever she goes, with the imaginary friend, and arguing with her imaginary friend in shops and in public buildings, and praying and kneeling down in the street and praying and cutting her hair mad, just chopping her hair off, which you can do if you want, but apparently it didn't look good. And she starts a publication called the Racist Press, which actually wasn't racist. So I don't know what point she was trying to make there. But she was intelligent, so she probably had a point. But at some point, she gets a gun. She goes into a gun shop. This is the local lunatic. So she goes into the gun shop with her fucking imaginary friend and orders a gun and ammunition. And it takes 15 days to arrive. Right? So she's just got to wait now 15 days to get her gun and her ammunition. And the guy who owned that shop had 15 days to go around the town. It's only a little town. Go around and say, look, do you know this woman? Oh, you mean the one who talks to herself? Yeah, she's a lunatic. No, it's because she wants a gun. Well, don't fucking sell her the gun then. You don't sell guns and ammunition to someone who's got an imaginary friend. I mean, it sounds obvious to me, but that's not what happened. They sold her the gun, and she took the gun and she got in a car, and she drove back in one go, in one sitting. Apparently it's really far, into New Mexico. And she went to the house where she used to live. And she went to a neighbour's house, her ex-neighbour at this point, and attacked her in her own home. Attacked a woman. This is a woman attacking a woman, a next-door neighbour. And it looks like from the scene that there was a fight, and she shot her and killed her. And then she got back in a car and drove to the post office where she used to work, this big sorting centre. And she needs to get in. So she sees a guy who's got his pass to get in because she hasn't got a pass anymore. She doesn't work there. And she pulls the gun on him. Give me the pass. So she gets the pass off him and he runs away and doesn't get shot. But she takes the time to execute 3 women at point blank range before she walks in the door. And I don't know if there's something about women in this, because she shot the next door neighbour. She was a woman. Maybe that's irrelevant. But she lets the man go when she gets to the door and kills 3 women who've got nothing to do with anything. She's already got the card. But she stops to execute these 3 women at point blank range. Bang. Cold blood. Then she walks in and she happens across 3 more women. Takes all them down. Bang, bang, bang. Shot the last one 4 times. Because she'd been practicing. I forgot to mention, in California. She'd been going to gun ranges and she'd been out in the backyard, practicing with a gun. She knew what she was doing. She was decent. But you don't have to be decent at point blank range. But she got 4 shots off. Bang, 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 bang. All hit the target. And the first 6 people that she executed were all women. And then there was a guy, and he didn't see any of this. He's got his headphones on because of the machines. And she's walked up behind him and shot him point blank range in the back of the head. And apparently he was a lovely man. And one of the women apparently that I've seen spoken about was a wonderful person as well. And yeah, she killed them all. And then she stood there and shot herself in the head and killed herself. And then that was in 2006. So that's 15 years ago. So there you've got 3 cases there. Brenda, Sylvia and Jennifer. All in America, unfortunately. That's not deliberate. I was just looking for cases of women who've done this. So now we're going to hit America, and this, it is what it is. And you really need to deal with it, honestly, because it's not good. So we'll go to Columbine, 1999. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. This is probably the most famous case of all. And it's two young guys in Columbine, Colorado, who are famous because they committed this high-profile school massacre. So who are they? Well, they grew up with money. They didn't grow up hard, not in that sense at least. The parents don't seem to have been abusive at all. It seems to be the opposite of that. And so they grow up with money and access to money and very liberal parents, which is, there's a kind of irony in all this. So, and I say that because what they did with that liberty was to assemble an arsenal of weapons and bullets. Now, when you kill somebody, you eradicate their liberty, their freedom to be alive, to live. You take that away from them. So using that liberty that you've been given to buy things that will take people's lives just doesn't make sense. There's no continuation there in ethos or, you know, in philosophy. And apart from that, you're a fucking maniac, you know, and what are you doing? And you can see they were building this arsenal of weapons and bullets and all this, and going out in the woods and shooting, and they were good. And they had loads of different kinds of guns, and they knew what they were doing with them as well. And they made several videos of themselves, school project videos where they're actually going in the school, practicing what they're actually really going to do, and giving that to the teachers. They've got a website in which they frequently threaten to kill people, everybody, specific people. One guy called Brooks, that was a friend of theirs, they threatened his life. Eric Harris threatened his life multiple times on the website. He had a fucking website threatening to kill people and go to the school. And he had bags full of guns. And he had, this Eric had several pipe bombs in his bedroom. I don't know what the parenting plan is here, but when your teenage son's got a load of guns and pipe bombs in his room, and he's threatening to kill people on his private website, and you do nothing about it, and he's out in the woods blasting everything he can see with a tree, with a gun, you've got, you know, there's serious problems here. And his best mate's the same. And so what did they do? They went and they planned all this out military fashion. They put bombs around the town in different places to distract the police. So they only caused a little fire, but people called the police, and the police had to go there to react to this. Small little town. It's actually called Littleton, the area where they lived. And so they had to go and investigate these little fires and big bangs. And what they'd done is they'd put bombs in the cafeteria of the school. And Eric Harris, who seems to be the leader, had actually studied the movements of people in the canteen to see when it would be most full, basically. And they'd gone in before that at some point. It's all very hazy, but in terms of what they can actually tell you. But they'd gone in there and planted bombs. And they're outside now, waiting for the bombs to go off. Because the plan is that the bombs are going to blow the school up and kill everybody. And the few people that manage to survive will come out the door, dazed and confused, and they'll get shot down by these two maniacs, Eric and Dylan. And that didn't happen. The bombs didn't go off. Didn't work. So they had to go in. Well, they didn't. But they did go in. And they walked in and started shooting people immediately. On site. And they walked around. They didn't run. They walked around the school, shooting people. And I've seen interviews with some of the victims who are, and witnesses from the school, and they will never be right. They will never be right again. I'm sorry to say, I think they're scarred for life, those people, because they just walked around and just butchered people, just shot people in the face, cold as ice, and they were shooting injured people out the windows because they were at some phase, like they've gone upstairs and they were trying to get these people out of the building and get them into ambulances, and they see this. These two, Eric and Dylan, and they shoot the windows out and start trying to shoot the injured people that are downstairs on the floor outside, bleeding, or they're on stretchers. One guy who's already been shot and they paralysed him. They put him in an ambulance, and these two crazy maniacs are shooting the top of the ambulance, So he's in the back of the ambulance. He's already been shot. He can't move his legs. He only went to school. And they shut the ambulance doors and the bullets are bouncing off the roof of the fucking ambulance. I mean, how can that happen? How can that even exist? And after all these cases as well in the same country, and it's still, even when you get in the ambulance, you're not safe. Crazy. And then after all this has gone on for a long time, couple of hours, I don't know, hour and a half maybe, but too long, they committed suicide. Now, I've heard that they shot each other, and I've heard they shot themselves. I don't know which is true, but I know that they both died. And then there was a school bus that never appeared, that never turned up. So people were waiting for another school bus to arrive with loads of kids on it, and it didn't happen. The bus never came. It was a mistake, and the parents were left there waiting for a school bus that might have their kids on it, and it never came. So, by the way, the police were waiting outside during all this. I don't know what the procedures are, but they were waiting outside. Maybe they couldn't go in for legislation. I don't know why they were waiting outside, but they were. And these little bastards killed 13 people and injured 24. 24 people injured, 13 dead. Any meaningful changes in legislation or laws to prevent future cases? Not really, because 8 years later, in 2007, Sung Hui Cho, known as Cho, perpetrated the Virginia Tech massacre. So who's this kid? He's born in South Korea, and he's a selective mute, meaning that he basically doesn't talk. But he can, and he moves to America as a kid, and his parents very typically work really hard, but are also very distant from him. And he grows up in a $400,000 house, which is, I mentioned that because he acted the victim. He made videos in which he was the victim, but in fact, it doesn't appear that he was a victim of anything. He lived quite a nice middle class upbringing with a nice family, apparently. But he had this crazy fantasy life where his girlfriend was a space traveller, and he had a brother that was actually him, that was known as question mark, and he used to just refer to say, no, I'm not Cho, I'm question mark. And he received counselling for 4 years. He was recognised to have emotional, developmental, psychological problems, and he was counselled for 4 years. And even in his schoolwork, he praised the Columbine massacre. And Eric and Dylan Klebold referred to them as martyrs. For what cause, I don't know. But yeah, there was clearly a problem with this kid. Clearly a problem with him. And then he creates another alter ego and calls himself Axe Ishmael, which probably sounds hard to him in his head. Sounds shit in reality, but he thought it made him sound hard. So he calls himself Axe Ishmael, and he gets some guns, and he goes to the training places, and he does the target shooting, and now he's got a Glock and a 9mm or something like that, and he's got 2 weapons of death in his hands, and nobody to control him. So he sends videos to NBC where he's just rambling, and he's playing the victim card on every turn, oh, you don't know what it's like to have this done to you and have that done to you. He had none of that done to him. And then gets up at 7 o'clock in the morning and shoots a girl, and a friend comes over and she gets shot as well. So he goes back to his room and he rearms, he gets tooled up, as we say in Manchester. And during this, he sends a letter to various press agencies explaining, it's almost like a manifesto, explaining why he'd done this and what his justification was for doing this shit. And then he goes back and he chains up the doors so no one can escape. And again, he walks round just massacring people, shooting people up. And he killed 32 people and injured 23. Right, so he was paying some kind of homage to Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. They killed 13 and injured 24. Cho kills 32 and injures 23 in a very similar thing. But just at the Virginia Tech University, not at the Columbine High School. But absolutely repugnant. And this guy was clearly clearly suffering from mental health issues. He was a selective mute. He wouldn't talk to anyone for years. And his writings, he wrote plays that were alarming. Somebody died in a horrific way at the end, normally him. You know, not good. There's clearly problems. You got, people who live with him saying, well, yeah, he was weird. He did this and he did that. And he was allowed to buy a gun and loads of weapons and then take them to fucking school and start shooting everyone up, which he did. And he killed 32 people and injured 23 as well. The Las Vegas shooting, and we don't know too much about this one anyway, but we know it's a guy called Stephen Paddock, and he did it 2 years ago, maybe 18 months ago, 2017. And he did it in Las Vegas. We know nothing about Stephen Paddock. Know nothing about the guy. Only that he had a brother and that he was a millionaire. And then one day, he sets up his macabre shop of death at the window on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel and Casino. And, I mean, the guns and the ammo that this guy had, he had, 40-odd weapons. He had thousands and thousands of rounds of ammunition. And during his 6-day stay at the hotel, in which he went back to his house multiple times, he carried 21 suitcases through reception. I mean, are you taking the piss? You try that in Manchester. Try going into the reception of a hotel 21 times carrying different suitcases. They're probably not going to think that you're going to kill people. They probably just think you're up to something. They're going to ask you at least what you're doing. Why have you got so many suitcases? But no. And it is a big hotel, to be fair, but, look at the gun crime, and, there are good reasons to be cautious, which was demonstrated because he rented one room and he rented another room. And not only did they allow him to go up the lift multiple times with all these suitcases full of guns and ammunition, they actually carried it up for him. He had bags. He had at least one big, massive bag, and they put it full of guns and ammunition, and they put it on a trolley and put it in the service elevator and took it up to his room with him, and they all went up together to the hotel room, and they've helped him. They've helped him to his room with the guns and the bullets and all that. He's gone in there and he's set up shop at the window. He's got an adjoining room as well to keep more guns in, which he did. He's set a camera up on the trolley. He's ordered room service and he's left the trolley outside and put a camera on it, looking down the hall so he can see if anyone's coming. And then he's broken the window or he's extracted the window. So many different stories about that. And across the road is a concert. 20,000 people are attending a concert. Pure Americana, country music. This is what I mean by the American thing. It's not that these people are American. There are 20,000 Americans across the road from this idiot who are not trying to kill anybody. They're just going to a party. There's just one. 1 in 20,000 is not a bad number. But unfortunately, the one has got fucking automatic weapons and shit tons of fucking bullets. He fired 100 bullets in less than 1 minute into a crowd of 20,000 people from across the road with a high-powered carbine rifle or whatever he was using. He fired 10,000 rounds in 10 minutes. I don't know. My mate Johnny knows about guns. He told me this is crazy. 1,000 rounds. 1,000 rounds in 10 minutes. I don't know if I said that right the first time. And he still had 5,000 rounds left in his room that he didn't use. He even shot the police. The police turned up to try and help people, and he shot them as well. And, of course, they manage in the end to detect where this is coming from, and they go up to his room, and you can actually watch it. It's on camera. They go up to his room, and they boom his door, and they go into his room, and they find him dead. And so, of course, the dead guy did it. I don't know. It looks more like he was tricked or forced to do that, to bring those bags in. Maybe those bags weren't full of guns. It was a decoy. I don't know. But the story itself, that this 64-year-old man with no military training, we don't know anything about him, but we know he's a millionaire, gets, all these weapons and all these bullets up to his room in a hotel in Vegas where they knew him. and starts executing people that he doesn't even know, and then shoots himself in the head. I just don't see any sense in that. So yeah, I'm willing to consider other possibilities, because this guy killed 60 people and injured 411 by gunfire. 867 were injured in total. So I imagine that's people fucking falling over and getting, walked on and whatever, having accidents in the confusion. But 1,000 rounds in 10 minutes, 411 people injured by gunfire, 60 dead, 867 injured in total. Crazy. And then MGM, who owned the casino, the Mandalay Bay, Metro Goldwyn Mayer, I think it is, they sued the victims. Over 1,000 people. Sued them all. The victims. Because, of course, people were criticising MGM, and they thought, well, we'll be horrible first. We'll sue these people, tie them up in litigation they can't afford until they drop the case. We'll just bully the victims. Horrendous. So after you've been shot and you've gone through this, then you get a major corporation like MGM coming in trying to fuck with your life. Absolutely horrible. Absolutely. Really, really bad. And that's Stephen Paddock. So please tell me anything you know about Stephen Paddock, because I don't know anything. I can't find any information on the guy, except his brother is a freak as well. He might be a really nice man, but he is weird. I'm just not buying the details on this one, but 60 dead. So what's the point in all this power hour? Well, I don't think, as I said at the beginning, Americans are more violent than anyone else. I know there might be a problem with Hollywood and, the gun culture, and everyone's got a gun in every fucking American film ever made. I know, but we all watch those films. I think it's the fact that they can get hold of these guns. So any psycho you've ever met could have had a gun at some point if you were in America. And just here's a statistic. Between 2009 and 2018, according to CNN, there were 288 school shootings in America. Just digest that. In a 9-year period, 2009 to 2018, 288 school shootings. So from Brenda Spencer in 1979 shooting them kids to the 2009-2018 period, what had American culture or society learned? In what ways had they improved? What had they done to prevent this from happening again? Because we've gone from 2 dead in 1979 to 60 dead in 2017. And fucking 867 people injured. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And the statistic is that it's 57 times more than other major countries combined. So this is like the G7, the top economies in the world. 57 times more. Canada, in the same time period, had 2. That's across an imaginary fucking line. That's across a border you can walk if you're not stopped from America into Canada. It's the same landmass. And on one side of the line, you've got 288 school shootings, and on the other side of the line, you've got 2. Do the math, as you say in America. There's a problem. I'm not blaming American people for, but it is a problem, and it needs to stop. You need to do something, because you're talking about being the leaders of the free world, but when your kids can't go to school without getting shot, you need to go back to the drawing board, right? And we don't want to see any more of this. So that's what we've got time for on the Power Hour. Sorry for anybody who's been affected by gun crime, and hopefully we can do something to try and slow it down and stop it eventually, because it really is unacceptable. Power to the people. Power Hour people say yes.